Stranger Things 4, why the pandemic delay may result in one of the show's best seasons. Stranger Things producer thinks Season 4 scripts are exceptional thanks to delays. Stranger Things Season 4 set photos show new punk rock character. Yo, he's hanging out with Steve, dude, that's epic! And you're telling me there's a dude dressed like that, talking to kids that look like that? If you're my one and only friend, you'll notice that I film-splain the concept of Stranger Things to you a lot. Maybe a little too much for someone who doesn't follow Tumblr pages that post pixelated gifs of Billy's mullet. We'll just be sitting in Taco Bell enjoying our limited time nacho fries when suddenly... Okay, I know you've only seen season 1 and you hardly remember anything from the show, but let me just break down episode by episode why the concept of Steve becoming a loser is kind of bogus, because if I was kicking it in Hawkins, Indiana in November of 1983, I would totally be there for him after he got wham-blammed in the face by Jonathan. I'd be like, shh, Steve, it's okay, let me just run my fingers through your hair and then... Does that sound accurate?
Like if this, yeah, that happened, yeah.
Okay, cool. The first season of Stranger Things started a whole new wave of movies set in the 80s. Some good, some bad. But this really was the start of something groundbreaking. Incredibly talented young actors and a story that brought you back to your childhood, but reincarnated in a way that intrigued all age groups. It was like a little time capsule of all your favorite 80s tropes, stuffed to the brim with all the shit that makes your monkey brain screech because you recognize a concept that yoinked straight from the nostalgic bits in your brain. This show was all people could talk about for a while, and with good reason. But what has happened since then? Well, now we have kids who can legally drive, some who are nearing adulthood, and what? Holy shit, is he really 19? God damn! Now realizing that this man is only a year younger than me, let's go back to when we were tiny children in July of 2016. I looked like this, and my little filmmaker brain couldn't comprehend how incredible this show was. But the older I've gotten, the more I've learned, and the less invested I've been in the show. At least, story-wise. I just can't stop asking myself, what happened? Where did it all go wrong? Because as you can probably tell by the title of this video and the tone of my vocal cords, I've really grown to dislike the direction the show is going. So until I make an ungodly long YouTube video where I can scream at the 3.5 people who will watch this all the way through and comment, good point, I won't be able to rest. So I went back to the days where my hair looked like Guy Fieri, and I rewatched the show from where it began. And I realized a truth to Stranger Things that might ruin how you feel about it forever. Before I beat this franchise to smithereens with a baseball bat with nails in it, let me lay down the things that I look for when I'm watching something. Because, contrary to the clothes I wear, I don't just like slow burn movies that end with your brain making dial-up noises for 10 dog years until it combusts. The things I look for that tickle my brain in all the right places are a captivating story, well-written characters, and proper pacing.
Cinematography and sound design are bonuses, but not necessary.
Now this isn't to say I don't love a good popcorn movie that I can just shut my brain off to. I'm currently making my way through the Friday the 13th franchise, and while those movies do not check off like any of those boxes I just listed, I still love it.
What you doing up there, Vinny? Rudy.
This list applies to something that I'm watching that is essentially a piece of art. I know the craftsmanship that goes into creating something so daunting. So when I see a director that's saying they created this, meaning they had their gooey hands in the writing and directing, I'm all for it. But my standards are definitely a lot higher. The thing that got me so hooked when I first watched the show is I love a good mystery. I grew up reading A to Z mysteries, watching Psych, so a mystery thriller is right up my alley. Stranger Things was this TV show that almost felt like a really long movie because you stayed up watching it until you've seen all 8 episodes and then, oh shit, the sun's up. Every actor made me feel like I was in their world. These kids are probably the best child actors I've ever seen in my life. Except for Macaulay Culkin. No one is better than Macaulay Culkin. At the time, I was this antisocial freak who felt nothing but empathy for these weirdos on screen. We all just wanted to be 11, just flipping shit with our minds and eating french fries from the midsection. So now that I have this neat little list that I look for when watching something, I was ready. My brain drenched in nostalgia with love going back to the beginning. This was before everything had been retold in seasons 2 and 3. This was before the Duffer Brothers sold their souls to Netflix. I was ready to put 100 on the test and circle it and maybe even put a gold star next to it. But I was only left with this. How the fuck? How could you have incredible actors, but the characters themselves fall flat? And I wanted so badly to be captivated by the story. But each time I was quickly taken out by the blatant disregard for how the characters should behave. When I watched the first episode, it felt absolutely perfect. The dynamic of the boys, the pacing of the story, and the suspense surrounding what happened to Will Byers. But as the season progressed, I was getting this weird feeling that I don't remember getting the first time I watched this. Frustration. I was trying to shove bias out of the next seasons out of my head and just focus on the story that was right in front of me. I found myself resenting a character more and more until I hit a breaking point. I wanted to shake them around a little bit. Maybe fuck around and plop them into a therapy session and try and uncover why they're reaching the high points of the dumbass scale. Why did no one tell me that Jonathan is a serial killer?
How much you want to bet he killed him?
Thank you, dude. I'm glad somebody said it and wasn't fooled by his fake accent.
Yeah, it kind of, definitely sinks in a little bit.
This character and this character are the same person.
Listen, don't take it so personally, okay? I don't like most people. He's in the vast majority.
In case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. I don't fit in, and I don't want to fit in.
I guess the first time I watched it, I empathized with the weird camera kid that didn't have any friends. Because I was the weird camera kid that didn't have any friends. The thing is, I did have friends. And I never went out with the intention to try and find my missing brother, and instead came across a teenager party where I sat around for at least half an hour in 50-degree weather, or as you would say, 10 degrees Celsius, and took photos of a girl hooking up with her boyfriend. And then proceeded to develop those photos at school, where then I played the sympathy card when the people I took photos of found out and broke my camera. I never did that. I do not understand how he not only got away with it, but the girl he took photos of fell in love with him. In the context of the story, it makes no sense. From a screenwriter's perspective, it makes perfect sense. There's a difference between the characters driving the plot and the plot driving the characters. The actions of Jonathan taking lewd photos of an underage girl without her consent gets a pass due to a driving bonk you over the head with apologies.
I shouldn't have taken that.
Plus, this freak flirts with him about it. Nancy, maybe you a freak that likes to be watched. We all have our limits. But this is a weird one not to have. We all kind of forgot the actions of Jonathan because Nancy did. The show did. The reason this dog shit happens is not for a character arc where Jonathan becomes a functioning member of society. Sure. By the end of this season, you could argue that he's made some friends and has become more social with his family. But these actions were not given because of his character growth. This happened because plot.
And now, Cameron presents Bullshit. Jonathan had to go out one night with the intention to find his brother, come across the party Steve was throwing, and hang around long enough to snap a couple of photos and capture one of Barb with the Demogorgon in the background. This leads to Steve needing to find out about the photos, which causes him to take the photos from Jonathan, tear them up in the parking lot, and Nancy taking some, which then leads to Nancy being curious enough to wonder where Barb went and investigate where she was last seen and see the Demogorgon, only to see the photo of it in the background and need Jonathan's help to blow up the photo. They then bond over the fact that they both have people they care about stuck in the Upside Down, which would work if he wasn't such a fucking creep in the first place. Then Steve has to see that both of them are hanging out and become pissed enough to spray paint the movie theater sign with his friends. This causes Steve and Jonathan to get into a fist fight, which causes Nancy to team up with Jonathan even more because now Nancy is important in getting in contact with the kids.
Oh yeah, the kids? We'll get back to that soon enough, but let me finish up here.
We eventually need this photo of Barb because not only is it proof of the monster, but now it's also a vital thread to letting Eleven get in contact with Barb, only to find out that she's dead.
So of course Jonathan needed to take these photos for half the plot to happen. It's a pretty shitty thing to do. So we're gonna keep having his character say he doesn't know why he took the photos. Probably because he doesn't. Since there would be no reason his character would be a pervert. But it's the best idea we would come up with for this entire plot to happen.
What was I saying? The kids? Oh yeah, the kids. Man, don't I look like a dang fool? I've been talking about this show this whole time and I've hardly mentioned the kids.
From what I recall about my feelings first watching this show, I feel like I disliked Lucas on an itty bitty microscopic level. He's always bogging down the group. Eleven is kind of insane. Are we sure we can trust her? That peaked so hard. Now, when I recently rewatched it, Lucas, absolutely genius work. I could not agree with you more. This girl is a psychopath who snaps necks for fun. Run. Papa didn't raise no simp. In episode 5, they realize the gate to the Upside Down is creating a massive magnetic pole and use their compasses to try and locate it. These boys will stop at nothing to try and find their friend, which is great for the story. But if I thought my friend was involved in a government conspiracy where they hid his death, I wouldn't leave my room. Regardless, we will go along with the fact that it is totally logistical that they love their friend enough to do anything for him. Cute. They walk around for God knows how long to realize that Eleven is purposefully moving the compasses so they can't find the gate. This might make sense if she was actually on the side of Hawkins' lab trying to cover it up, which would honestly be kind of interesting. But she's not. So why is she lying exactly? Yes, she says it's not safe. But she could have said that before they got on their bikes and walked 500 miles. And 500. She's becoming a true friend to these kids. Mike has taught her that friends never lie, but she does. Time and time again. This understandably causes Lucas to distrust Eleven even more than he does. And she also almost killed him, so there's a lot of good reasons for Lucas to go out on his own. This plot-driven story is a little harder to realize, but why do Mike and Lucas fight in the first place? Mike believes Eleven, Lucas doesn't. Their initial outburst makes sense. Each of their stubbornness won't budge. But when they're talking about Eleven, Mike says that she's part of their group now. You could chalk this up to what we call simpery. But you see, what I've done is I've created an anagram for that, and I call it bad writing. You know what would be better? If Eleven proved herself to the group again. Almost like a character arc, where, you know, she tears down the walls of being self-defensive and instead helps others. She saves Mike, but Mike isn't the person that she's trying to convince that she's on their side. Lucas doesn't see this interaction happen. We, as the audience, see it, so we forget the fact that Lucas still has no reason to trust her, because we trust her. She does nothing to gain the trust of Lucas. But then, silly me, the plot can't happen. Lucas has to go on his own and see 3 mysterious white vans leave Hawkins' lab, and can only assume one reason why 3 vans could possibly be leaving at such speed. They know where Eleven is. For all this Dumbo kid knows, they might be all leaving to go get lunch for the guys. Got a cool $3 off a large, any style, and as many toppings as you want pizza. Gotta present it with a guest check, and oh damn it, it expired 4 months ago. So Lucas had to be there, you see, to warn his friends that the bad men were coming. Thus ending his resentment towards Eleven because she made a van do a sick gainer over them. Hate gone. It's as if you were gonna have cereal, so you go and get the milk. You open your fridge and you realize you're out of milk. You also realize you're out of cereal. Okay, so you make a scrambled egg. But you're also out of eggs. So you write down a list of Eggies, milk, and some Fruity Pebbles with Shaq's face on it. So you drive to the store, put some stuff in your cart, and arrive back home. But instead, you grabbed a bag of flour, gummy bears, and a bell pepper. All good things to get, but nothing that you needed. You also get arrested because you never paid for the things you got. The grocery list is like a list of items that your character would do. And the items you got is what your character would never do morally. But you did them anyway. Why? Because the Duffer Brother gods commanded you to. A plot-driven story isn't always a bad thing. I said I was making my way through the Friday the 13th franchise, right? Dumb slashers, comedies, and action films are perfect for plot-driven stories. You need the final girl to go take a shower right now. Why? Because then the kill can happen. Plus, boobs. Questioning the logic of a comedy is missing the point of why they're made. In Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, Ted didn't die. Why?
I fell out of my shoe when I hit the floor. Back.
If you're gonna do a plot-driven story, lean into it. A plot-driven story feels frustrating when it's a Netflix series advertised as a mystery drama. This is not the plot you want tied to a plot-driven story. Dramas are meant to be ripe with character-driven plots, intertwined with every other character and the story itself. I think the reason they've avoided this critique so much is because they found a loophole that's shaped like a donut car turn in a church parking lot. Action. Action makes you forget every single reason why your characters are there. Who cares about character development when Steve's sending Demogorgons out of the park? However, there is one outlier amidst everyone else's drive to create plot. Hopper. This character drives the plot. He's a deadbeat cop, divorced, he's got a dead kid, anger issues, a true alcoholic. The perfect storm of a man to help a child when he couldn't save his own. We see it beautifully unfold as we slowly learn that his child passed away. He and his wife never speak. She's got a new kid. Then it all culminates in the final episode as we see flashbacks of them finding out that his daughter has cancer, reading to her in the hospital, and eventually dying. When he sees a helpless mother trying to find her lost son, he feels more than obligated to help. Because anytime he can, he will. It only helps that there's layers of conspiracy which cause him to punch some dude's lights out and almost die in the process trying to find this gate. But this is where we see the potential of how they can write characters, which almost makes it hurt that much more when every other character feels so lackluster. Alright, don't mind me, it's been almost 4 months since I last recorded. But I have a new mic now, so... There are a few things you need to consider when writing a second season to a critically acclaimed first season. You need to make a richer, more evolved experience from season to season. Are you rehashing the same lessons? If you are, make sure the characters face bigger obstacles that will ultimately change your character in profound ways once the season is over. When season 1 ended, most of our main characters went through dramatic changes. They are now those changed people once you start season 2.
At least they should be.
But now they need to face even harder challenges to evolve even more. If you make each season a great story, your overarching story of all the different seasons should slide into place quite nicely. Let's start with where our characters were a year ago, and where they are when season 2 starts. The best way to do this is to quickly go through as many characters as I possibly can so we can both be on the same page. Season 1. Let's start with the kids. All of them remain fairly stagnant, but each of them sort of learns to believe in their ideas, confront danger, and love their friends unconditionally. 11 learns to trust people and will ultimately do anything to keep them safe, even confronting death itself.
Nancy learns to be more independent, courageous, and values her brother probably more than she ever did. Steve changes a lot. He started out as your typical jock fuckboy, but turns into this wonderfully evolved character that distances himself from his shitty friends and values his love for Nancy more than most things. Jonathan doesn't change all that much. He learns to be a little more social, but that's about it. Joyce started out frazzled and lost in the world. She doesn't evolve drastically because she's always cared for her boys most of all, but she will now go through hell and back to be together again, which leaves her more braver and outspoken. Hopper was a deadbeat cop who was stuck in grief between his dead daughter and his divorced wife. After helping others and saving someone else's child, it has helped mend a small part of his life. So now we have all these characters who are stronger than they've ever been before and are now connected through this traumatic experience they've all shared. Now that they're not relatable kids like you and me anymore, where do we go from here? With a new story to tell, you need to kick it up a notch. We need to get to know our characters more, see them face even harder challenges, and turn into people that keeps the audience interested. This isn't just another action story, because we know these characters now. We need some heavy character episodes and plot, because this, as the audience, is now personal. Once you know someone, even if you don't know them well, you care for them. But after a certain amount of time, it's important to know a little bit about their story. In Season 2, not only are we introduced to completely new characters, but now we get to see every kid's siblings and parents. This makes us immediately care about them because we get to see their story more often, which I honestly give kudos to. However, their story needs to matter because you cannot just stop here. You now have a giant ensemble cast. It's like the Brady Bunch on steroids. And once you have this many characters, it's nearly impossible to give them enough time to shine. Guys, they bit off more than a Demogorgon could chew. Mike and Will probably suffer the most from this issue. It becomes very glaring that the writers didn't know what to do with either of them. For Will, it's because he's hardly been a character this whole time. And for Mike, who is he without Eleven now? At least we could shoot Dustin and Lucas into this love triangle with a bunch of wacky shenanigans along the way. We have too many characters, so now we gotta start making a bunch of different B-plots. The A-plot is Will being possessed by the Mind Flayer, which starts off incredibly strong and is probably my favorite plot. Then after Will traps a bunch of scientists in the tunnels, it tapers off into nothing super interesting. There are 4 main offshoots to this season's story, which I drew on this loose leaf notebook paper. When you create B-plots, it's meant to round out your story and help pace your A-plot so the viewer doesn't get burnt out on, "It's me, Will. I'm a regular boy who can draw perfect tunnels over multiple sheets of paper at turbo speed and I like doing it with my shirt off." And so Mike only has to say now memories 50 times instead of 200.
And the more you see these now memories. In your now memories? In your now memories? Now memories. Now memories? Now memories? Now memories. Now memories? Now memories? Now memories? Now memories? Now memories?
Then we have Lucas, Max, and Dustin's plot, which branch off into a lot of different subgroups that occur throughout the season. Dustin's on his own to handle Dart until Steve comes along. And I want to talk about Dustin's plot in particular. This is a lower stakes version of the overall threat in this story. We have a Demogorgon threat that will destroy things we care about. This plot starts cracking jokes, and before you know it, you're stealing donuts out of a Krispy Kreme garbage. Instead of paralleling the A-plot, it contradicts it. The Mind Flayer is not so generous. We're left to believe that not all Demogorgons are bad, that there is humanity amongst these man-eating monsters. These same man-eating monsters that killed Bob. This doesn't work. You're left confused and somewhat empathetic for all these demo dogs that are being killed and forced back into the gate before it closes. This deflates the climax. This will enforce that our main characters aren't in grave danger, making Bob's death a slap in the face, because they are in danger. This was purely so that Dustin's stupid decisions could pay off. His plot made absolutely no sense to his character. I understand that he wanted to discover a new species. But with the events of last year fresh in everyone's minds, and the fact that this creature is freaking out Will to such a high degree, you need to curb stomp that bitch. His excuses for keeping Dart differ from, they have a special bond,
We have a bond.
A pond? Just because he likes nougat?
kept it to impress Max,
You kept something you knew was probably dangerous in order to impress a girl who you just met?
or he wanted to be selfish and keep the discovery to himself.
We gotta show him to Mr. Clark. No, what if he steals my discovery?
Dustin is smarter than this. Or he should be. He's the one who knew how compasses worked above anyone else. He's clearly written as the smartest, geekiest of them all. But riding the line between comic relief yet still smart is lost on the Duffer Brothers for this season. They make him not know what the word presumptuous means, and have him purr like Chewbacca constantly, and he suddenly doesn't care about big issues occurring. All he cares about is his man-eating new friend, and the fact that Max doesn't like him as much as she likes Lucas. Basically the exact opposite of how he behaved in season 1. He should have gotten his face ripped off by Dart in the tunnels. Now I don't want these characters to die, but if you show me a scene where they totally should have died, and they didn't by sheer luck and plot, it's stupid. I will sooner accept that this homunculus is real and is stomping around in the exact same universe that I am, before I accept that a pathologically honest character is lying for no other reason than to serve the plot. And you could argue that all these plot lines serve a specific purpose for the overall story. The kids' plot is meant as comedic relief. Nancy and Jonathan's plot touches on the issues of PTSD. But what is Eleven's plotline? It's technically a B-plot where you purely spend time with the character to get to know her better. Since last season, we hardly got to know her character at all. But the main argument is if it meant anything. This episode should technically be the most interesting episode, going off the basis of what I said the second season should entail. But what have we learned about Eleven when season 2 ended? What did she learn? Not only did this episode equate to nothing in terms of advancing the plot, but it also did something else. Deprived us. Keep in mind that when you stop following what a certain character's up to, you've probably just deprived some viewers of their favorite. That's allowed, of course, but it's not always the best decision. This episode has been hounded to death, and with good reason. No one thinks it's worth it. The Duffer Brothers claim they wanted to try something new and not feel like they were doing the same thing over and over again. Fair. But backdoor pilots seem like such a bad idea, especially leading up to the finale of a season. In a 20 or more episode season, it can be easier to slip those in. But this is a tight-knit show where the plot gets in and gets out. Hey, editor Cameron here. I just have to say that while editing this, I realized that the Duffer Brothers have never actually claimed that this is a backdoor pilot, but even they agree that it does feel like one. So even though it's not confirmed and they say that this episode was vital to Eleven's character arc, there are still so many different ways they could have done this better. There are 4 different writers credited besides the Duffer Brothers in Season 2. 5 out of the 9 episodes were written by these different writers. That's 64.3% where other writers were credited. I noticed a pattern as I was watching Season 2 that some episodes would end and I wouldn't notice any glaring issues. And that always meant that the Duffer Brothers didn't write that episode. There would be issues with the overall plot constantly, but individual episodes would keep me hooked and interested. The Duffer Brothers have seemed to fall into this habit of writing the first 2 episodes and the last 2 episodes, which, to me, feels like they teed up a golf ball, hit it in a direction, and didn't know how it would get there, but knew roughly where it would land. They didn't account for the wind, essentially asking other people to fill in the gaps as to where the golf ball would fall into sand traps, make it up a hill, but not caring how many strokes it took to get there. There are 25 episodes across all 3 seasons. The Duffer Brothers wrote 11, others wrote 14, surprisingly even, considering. But their names have consistently been absent in the entire middle chunk, which is arguably the most valuable part of the story. We wouldn't care about Harry Potter that much if he had killed Voldemort by the end of the first book. There wouldn't be more story to tell because that's what the whole story is about. But because we not only spend 7 books with him, we learn about his day-to-day. You know, how boring he finds history of magic, how much he loves Quidditch, and just how much he wants to lay pipe with Draco. Now, I'm not saying this show has turned out this way just purely from the writer's room. I know that from the writer's room to the editing bay that there is so much that can go wrong or just change. Especially with a giant corporation breathing down their neck to keep people on their platform. I read through a copy I found online of the season 2 finale, and there was one interesting thing that didn't make it to the screen. When Hopper and Eleven are driving to Hawkins' lab, we get the most spoon-feedy dialogue about Hopper. He says outright why he gets angry and that he's scared of losing Elle like his daughter Sarah. We didn't need to be told this. You can pick those clues up. But we get told anyway in case your little pea-sized brain couldn't figure that one out. But in that dialogue, they have Hopper give Eleven a bracelet that belonged to Sarah. I understand why they cut it because it serves no purpose when Hopper says it rather than a gesture. But actions do be speaking louder than words. I would have loved to see Eleven learn about Sarah all on her own. Instead of finding the box about her mother, it could have been Sarah's. And just through her expression alone, we realize that she's just finding this out, and realizes why Hopper does what he does, thus making her empathize more. Then, as they're driving in the car, we have a long silence, met with Eleven quietly saying, "I'm sorry." About what? Sarah. I didn't know. Hopper then asks how she found out, and Eleven says she found Sarah's box hidden under the house. Eleven could call her pretty, and we'd need nothing but Hopper's expression softening, about to cry, when he looks at the bracelet of Sarah's on his wrist and gives it to Elle, telling her that he wants her to have it. It made his girl brave, and it'll make Eleven brave too. Then they hold hands and drive off. Eleven's character is supposed to harness her powers in this season, and come to terms with the people who treated her like a lab rat, and now the family that she never had. But because the show takes a break right before the finale to show you this training, which doesn't pertain to the plot we've been following, our monkey brain goes, why aren't we focusing on the Demogorgon that just broke into the lab? It especially makes you scream when the episode after The Lost Sister picks up right where we left off before that episode. I'll talk more about this later, but Eleven did not need to be alive for this season. She isn't utilized in the plot at all. Heck, there's one episode where we don't even cut to her. Her sacrifice in season 1 is shit on because she didn't die at all. In fact, she's fine. But you need her to close the gate. Okay, so utilize that in a more intertwined way. When we find out just what happened to Eleven, we realize that after she disintegrated like Tom Holland, it's revealed that she's been sent to the Upside Down. Aw shit, what's she gonna do? Her powers are so weak since she just used them all and she's opening the gate to our world, and she's back, she's fine. It would be so much more interesting to have Eleven's powers completely gone, trapped in the Upside Down. This can then lead to our characters realizing that Will's in danger and they need someone like Eleven again. Our characters could ask themselves, what happened to the other numbers before 11? They track down 8 and they ask her to close the gate. Which could even cliffhanger us into season 3 where 11 is still trapped, the gate has just been closed, for good. This can integrate Callie more into the story, and then we don't have to have a Suicide Squad type beat where we learned that revenge bad. Or you could still have 11 open the gate to our world, and that was the last ounce of her power. But now she needs a trainer to get her powers back. She's been hiding in Hopper's cabin, getting used to a life without powers. Hopper remembers 11's box and decides to investigate to see where the previous numbers could be, and finds Callie and asks her to train 11. Because with where the story sits now, I don't understand how 11 glommed onto the fact from the story that was shifting through her mom's mind the only thing that she got from that was, cool story about how you sacrificed your life for me and did try to save me, but I think what you were trying to say is that I need to find the girl that was shown briefly sitting next to me for no other reason besides for the fact that I need to learn about the things that are important to me and will make me stronger. But I already knew that. So now the season has ended. How have our characters developed? What has changed their life in such profound ways to set us up for a cool Season 3? Majority of our main characters don't learn or progress at all in Season 2. A lot of them have remained stagnant and have only learned more of the same. Steve is the one that has evolved the most. We see him get his heart absolutely broken by Nancy and learns to let her go, and decides to use that energy to help others. We do get insight into Eleven, Nancy, and Jonathan, but besides Steve, I can't think of any other character that has changed or grown since Season 1. With this in mind, Season 3 is about to be one hell of a shitstorm. Sit down, kiddo. I got something I need to tell you. Eventually, you and me, we're all gonna die. That's just how the world works. We have a certain amount of time on this earth to do as much good as we can. And then that's it. So make sure you spend the time that you have the best that you can. And just know that up until the very last moments of my life here, where I'm facing a electronic laser opening up a portal to hell, I will always love you. Then after I've waited a good amount of time for you to mourn and move on, I will come back, having not died at all. See, this was just to fuck with you, you stupid piece of shit kid. I don't know about you, but I've watched so many superhero Disney princess Pixar movies where the ending can literally not be bad, that I'm constantly looking for the opposite in my adulthood. The don't die ditties all have their place, don't get me wrong. Some days I just want to curl up and watch Aladdin for the 10th millionth time or sing along to the Hercules soundtrack. I love that vibe. But I also love TV shows or movies that will end on a bittersweet note, or none of our characters end up where we thought they would, or someone fucking dies and it's brutally real. The show will not go there with our main crew. They'll kill off minor characters, characters who haven't been here from the beginning, who have served their purpose well and really don't need them anymore. But killing off a main character? That just won't do. We can't just leave these Daddy Hopper stands out in the cold. But we can't make it seem like our characters are totally invincible, so... We'll kill them off. and then they're just back. Hey, quick question about that. Won't that make the audience feel like they can't trust us anymore when we kill off a character? No! Eleven sacrifices herself in the finale of the first season, is teased as still being alive in that same episode, and is immediately brought back at the beginning of Season 2 without a scratch on her. Meanwhile, Barbara is dead for no other reason than to make Nancy vengeful in the next season. Season 2. Bob dies for no other reason than to give Hopper room to romance Joyce when Season 3. Billy sacrifices himself to help everyone else escape from the monster that has been inhabiting him all season. Alexei dies when he has given away all of his useful information. Hopper sacrifices himself to stop the Mind Flayer from ruining Hawkins for good, and is immediately teased in that same episode that he is still alive and will be back for Season 4.
Do you see this stupid pattern occurring? Barb, Bob, Billy, all B names. Dead. Alexi, not a B name, but an A name, and that's right next to B. Fucking dead. Eleven and Hopper are main characters with eerily similar deaths. At this point, if any of these characters die, I will not believe it. They had the gall to give Hopper an emotional speech, and he's just in Russia. He's in Russia, alive, working on a railroad. Now, I'll be honest, this season had my head spinning after every episode. I didn't even know how to interpret this season. It's nothing like its origins. If I had told people who had only seen season 1 and showed them the scene where Billy is walking past MILF Candy, and I told them that this is Stranger Things, they would not believe me. To me, it feels like the Duffer Brothers are course correcting. Instead of a mystery drama, it's pure 80s schlock. Season 2 had mixed reviews, and it mirrored season 1 a little too closely. For season 3, they had to go all in, revert expectations in a way you wouldn't expect. They went full 80s cheese, and I kind of love it. Not all of it intentional, but I'm a sucker for cheesy 80s movies. And on top of that, the character's drive is more intentional than ever. It was such a bizarre feeling once I realized it, because I was so used to the characters wanting to do something so that it would purely pay off for the plot one way or another. Each episode felt more cohesive. The writers were blending rather than clashing. And as each episode ended, I would sit back and decompress in my brain the glaring issues, and it almost always came up empty. There is, however, one issue with transforming your show into an Art of Cheese festival in Wisconsin. Your viewers will struggle to take the actual serious parts seriously. Hi there. There could be a pivotal moment in an episode where the tension is rising and rising. They're running out of time. How can they possibly make it out of there alive? What? Is that singing? The first half of the season was when I was the most interested. We got sludge monsters, Little Shop of Horror vibes, Will actually acting like a kid and not being absolutely torn apart from the inside out by demo dinguses. Joyce doesn't have a giant reason for concern this time. The town itself is in danger, but Will isn't. So why should she need to be worried mom character? She doesn't. Which is why they didn't know what to do with her. Once one of the characters loses the very core as to why they are who they are, they're tossed aside and a new character replaces them. I think the things they suffer with every season is giving each character a thing to do each episode. In some, the adults are left with nothing to do but fill time. Sometimes it's the opposite. But in these downtimes, when they give these characters room to breathe, they don't let them grow. There's one episode in particular where Will is trying to convince his friends to play D&D with him again. He has missed out on so many grand adventures that I don't blame him for trying to make up for lost time. But his friends have moved on to girlfriends and don't want to play with him, essentially calling the whole game stupid and not caring that Will wants to play his campaign. Will runs off and has a heartfelt moment where he feels like his friends don't even care about him anymore. He rips up photos and tears down his fort. But just as his friends arrive, he senses the Mind Flayer nearby. And now, for the rest of the season, if anyone tries to mention the fight they had in hopes to apologize, Will says to drop it, because there are...
We've bigger things to worry about now.
There are, but now this opportunity has been handed to them on a silver platter in front of them to make Will more of a character, and they push it aside because why build character when you can have Will touch the back of his neck a bunch? I think the reason I like the beginning of this season so much is because it feels fresh. Yeah, it's still the Mind Flayer, but it's a completely different approach. He's recruited a whole army of humans to blend into society undetected. It opens the idea that the Mind Flayer isn't a mindless killing machine, but instead something with intention and calculated approaches. We even have 11 lose her powers at the end of Season 3. I had totally forgotten this plot point and was surprised when I had written down nights before that 11 should lose her powers to make the dynamic more interesting. I'm very curious to see where they will take it and how long these powerless days will last. But I wish it had happened sooner. I would argue that 11 used the same amount of energy that she did in Season 1 and in Season 3. The fact that it took her all the way until this recent season to completely drain her powers, I'm shocked. Not because I don't think it's possible it took this long, but because the writing told you that it could happen any second. By the end of Season 1, you really question how much they've just used 11 as an accessory to the protagonist's goal. She's been asked to do so much. And when she looks back at Mike and the others to say goodbye, you feel like this is it, the last of her powers, and she's going to use it to save her friends. Season 2 begins with her powers intact. She does get trained, but clearly not enough to make an impression from season to season, because now we pick up in Season 3 where she uses her powers as carelessly as she did in Season 1, possibly draining them for good. With 11 joining the Byers in Illinois, I'm interested to see how the dynamics will change, and if the Byers will finally have something to do again. Stranger Things might be a complete mess sometimes, but there is no denying that it has changed the market for a lot of films in the future. It has opened up new opportunities for child actors, and it has let these two dudes make their very own, very first TV show. Which is neat. I probably like Stranger Things for completely different reasons than most people. But it's just good fun, isn't it? I'm curious to see what direction Season 4 will go, and if it will truly be as good as people think it will, due to delays. The show kept me hooked until the sun came up, and kept my heart in thrills as I went through some pretty shitty times in my life. And I'm incredibly thankful for that. Despite its flaws, there are things to enjoy from it, and things to learn from it. As a show, and from a filmmaker's perspective, I wish the Duffer Brothers all the best, and I hope that with time and learning, that they can make some truly spectacular things.
Hey, maybe you should just shut up and play the game.